you and I have both referenced it several times, and I have this aching little red light in the back of my brain, which is if you look today at the lower middle market, actually, let's say the companies that the lower middle market buys in the PE world, right? Some of them are not using the internet effectively. They're still not using 1998 internet stuff.
Yep.
And it's 2024, and they're still not using a CRM that, for example. I feel like there's more sophistication to the comment than saying it's going to be table stakes, because on paper it's table stakes maybe based on industry. Is it like there's more sophistication to that point that I want to hear you break? Like it's table stakes for PPC ads managers to use AI to write better but it's not table stakes for Bob the drain guy to optimize his schedule with AI, even though like the franchisors will do it, some of the guys. But like, do you think, like I think about the internet still hasn't fully proliferated the lower middle market.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But if you think about the evolution of those businesses, a lot of them are owned by boomers.
Correct.
And a lot of those boomers are retiring now.
Correct.
And a lot of them have ridiculously overvalued expectations of what their company is worth.
Correct.
Every year those numbers go down, and because it is easier to replace them. So like, if your advertising sucks, I'm making a build versus buy decision.
Yep.
And do I want that business? So those businesses eventually just go to zero because they're not worth buying, or it's just too painful dealing with Ernest because he's like, 67 years old and thinks his business is worth 10 million, but actually might be worth 250,000. So those businesses just vanish. And who fills the void? The void is probably filled by that franchisor who has that, those economies of scale, or by some young Turk who is willing to run a sweaty startup, but always has their eye on what those tools are. So I think there's this natural death that is going to happen as nature renews itself on that end, because so many of those businesses are owned by boomers, and they will never adapt.
There are always, though, technological late adopters, right? And so you're right, it won't be boomers, but let's say I'm, in my almost like 40, right? There are people my age who are internet native, but they're not going to hop to automation and AI. So then they'll be talking about the millennials and, the millennials own all the HVAC. And then it'll be there's always technological laggards. So there's more to it than saying it's like, it is table stakes for the most efficient operation. Like there's another sentence I'm seeking there, or another clause. It's table stakes for people competing on operational efficiency. But if they're competing on customer intimacy, maybe it's not table stakes. Or I'm interested. There's something that you're saying.
Yeah, I think it might also have to do with where they sit in, are they an SMB or are they lower middle market?
Yeah.
Because in SMB land, everything is fragmented, and and everything can be inefficient, because the benefit to being efficient is really pretty small, because you can compete with other crappy businesses, and most of them have very little possibility of actually elevating to lower middle market. So, I mean, it's just kind of trench warfare out there. And you don't need sophisticated operators. And if, so you're right, table stakes. What is table stakes might depend on where you sit in the stack. And that is also kind of a reverse barbell, in the sense that SMBs, they might not need to move much. F500s, just by virtue of market share, might not need to move as fast. In the middle, though, where there is the resourcing and there are some folks who, PE is active and they're pushing for that edge, that's where you might see most of the activity.
Is it fair to say that it's going to be table stakes for businesses that don't have a geographic moat? Is that another way to say it? Because if I can serve your customers without being in that market, one of the more efficient. Whereas if just by being the gutter guy in Milwaukee, I win, it's probably not table stakes, right? Is that because it won't attract? It's a proxy for SMB versus low middle market is really what it is.
Yeah, possibly. I think that there's certainly when you eliminate geography for a virtual business of some sort, yes, that's the obvious thing. Yeah. But it's not to say that it's not useful, because let's say I own an HVAC business in Milwaukee and I've got 10 trucks. I still can make use of these tools for robocalling, for marketing,
for route optimization. I mean,
exactly.
I've done some of this work, like for upselling warranties with I mean, there's there's so much.
So I think it's still useful. You may not get all of the leverage, but I think the reason why you're not getting as much of the leverage is because you've got a last mile business. Yeah, I mean, you got feet on the street, and I think that's really more the constraint.
Yeah. That's a good way to say it. There's some like correlative, causative stuff where it's like, well, is it because that, or is it the other way? Right?
Yeah.